Darkness versus light.
The current president has cloaked American darkness for much too long. Too much anger, too much fear, too much division.
President Biden would focus first on four things if elected: the pandemic, the economic downturn, racial justice issues, and climate change.
Fox's Peter Ducey. While Biden delivered the speech in a mostly empty hall, hundreds of people were allowed to cheer from their cars in the parking lot.
Who knew drive-ins would be back? How did we find out? They invited us. We got it as a kind of a surprise. We're going to do something in person, which was fantastic.
The Republican National Convention kicks off Monday, mostly online, but President Trump is wasting no time tweeting during the Biden speech. In 47 years, Joe did none of the things of which he now speaks. The president campaigned in Biden's home state of Pennsylvania on Thursday, warning residents a Biden presidency would cost them thousands of oil jobs. During the 2016 campaign, the president called it a rigged election. On Fox's Hannity Thursday night, the president said 2020 may be worse.
51 million ballots sent to who knows who. I mean, where are they going? This is going to be the greatest scam in history. This will be the most fraudulent election in history.
The campaign is suing to stop some of those unsolicited mail-in ballots. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
The Justice Department says it will go to the nation's highest court, if necessary, to restore the death penalty for the Boston Marathon bomber.
An appeals court tossed out Johar Tsarnaev's death sentence last month, ruling the trial judge did not adequately question jurors about pretrial publicity of the case. Attorney General William Barr telling the Associated Press they'll push for a death penalty at a new sentencing trial and take it all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. Johar and his older brother Tamerlan Tsarnaev carried out the 2013 attack that killed 3 people and injured over 260, but the defense argues Johar was a pawn in a plot masterminded by his radicalized brother. Tamerlan died after Johar ran him over following a shootout with police. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
There are now nearly 50,000 people who've been ordered to evacuate from their homes by a series of wildfires in California. Those fires have left at least 5 people, including a utility worker, dead. 175 buildings have been destroyed, some of them homes. Thousands more structures are in jeopardy. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo telling the United Nations on Thursday the U.S. is calling for sanctions to be reimposed on Iran. Russia contends the U.S. forfeited that ability when it exited the Iran nuclear deal, but U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien says the U.S. absolutely has that authority.
The United States was listed as one of the parties that could snap back sanctions, and that was a protection for the United States that was built into the agreement, into the UN Resolution 2231. That resolution's never been changed. So there may be UN member states that don't like what the resolution says, but the resolution gives the U.S. the right to snap back the sanctions, and the countries that violate those sanctions will have a price to pay.
O'Brien on Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum. Doctors treating Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny say his condition has improved slightly, but they've yet to confirm reports that he'd been poisoned. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
$5 footlong. Pile high with veggies.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Hofidi, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. And I'm going to keep on saying it because it is the foundation of Tall Tales. The Bill of Rights to the United States Constitution, individual freedom and liberty. Being part of the greatest country on earth, probably the greatest country there ever was or ever will be on earth. Having the opportunity to speak to an international radio listening audience. That's what Tall Tales is all about. I started out every day with something I called Zemi Ikotni, which translates to Meet the Press. But it's better than PMSNBC's Meet the Press because I don't try to gaslight you into thinking that I'm being fair and objective as I am the extension of the Democrat Party like Chuck Todd. I don't do that. I let you know exactly where I'm coming from. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative, and I want to stay a conservative. I take the time to go through the two editorials, or what appears on the editorial pages of our two newspapers, and correct them if necessary, evaluate them, and give the better of the two the coveted blue star, which almost always goes to the Post because the Daily News quit writing local editorials months ago. So ordinarily, I just kind of dismiss the Daily News editorial. Today, however, it has some substance. It's not a local editorial. It's not a homegrown editorial. It's by a guy named Glenn Harlan Reynolds, a University of Tennessee law professor and the author of a book called The New School, How the Information Age Will Save American Education from Itself. And here's what he says. Police being pulled back, neighborhood patrols, sign of failure. When the dawn patrols got to tell you twice, they're going to do it with a shotgun. That's a lyric from Steely Dan. I don't know much about Steely Dan. Are you a Steely Dan fan, Jose?
I am, but I don't recognize this lyric.
Okay.
Can you hum a few bars?
I can't even hum a few. I can't even hum a few bars of Steely Dan's. Okay. That reminds me of, one time when I was in college and, a little bit obstreperous, etc. My friends and I were having a party, and we got kind of rowdy and kind of noisy, 11 o'clock at night, somebody's knocking on the door, and I answer the door, and the guy with a really angry look on his face says, "Do you know there's a sick old lady upstairs?" And I said, "No, but hum a few bars. Maybe I can get it."
You had me at you were partying.
Even that was hard to believe, huh?
That was crazy.
Yeah. All right. So, Steely Dan. But it reflects what seems to be a new trend in two of America's bluest cities, the replacement of police with civilian militias. The press prefers to call them, quote, neighborhood patrols, since they're in Democrat cities. There are some people who might favor this step forward for civil rights and racial justice, but the facts don't support such a reading. In two cities where the police have pulled back from urban areas, they've been replaced by armed gangs demanding protection money, increased violence, and yes, prejudice against people who, quote, don't belong. Anyone with a brain and a bit of historical knowledge would have seen this coming, which is no doubt why it eluded so much of our political class. This sounds like the kind of stuff I'd say, Jose. Yeah.
Don't say.
But now the lid is off. The New York Times have reported the ugly truth recently. Its story opens with Faisal Khan, one of a number of business owners, are suing the city of Seattle for tolerating and even encouraging lawlessness in their neighborhoods. Faisal Khan was being told by news media and his own mayor that the protests in his hometown were peaceful. Let's see. With a block party atmosphere, but that's not what he saw through the windows of his Seattle coffee shop. He saw encampments overtaking the sidewalk. He saw roving bands of masked protesters smashing windows and looting. Young white men wielding guns would harangue customers, as well as Khan, a gay man of Middle Eastern descent who moved to Seattle from Texas so he could be more comfortably out. To get into his coffee shop, he sometimes had to seek permission from a self-appointed armed guard to cross a border they erected. They barricaded us all in here, Khan said, and they were sitting in lawn chairs with guns. How bad did it get? So bad that even the people soliciting protection money were complaining. The Times tells of Khan being solicited by a Black Lives Matter community guard in charge of several others. Local merchants pay for his protection, but the guard, Rick Hearns, is appalled by what's going on. Mr. Hearns has had a bad experience with police his whole life. He says he wants police reform, but he was appalled by the violent tactics and rhetorics he witnessed during the occupation. He blamed the destruction and looting on opportunists, but also said that much of the damage on Capitol Hill, that's Capitol Hill in Seattle, came from a distinct contingent of violent, armed white activists. It's Antifa, he said. They don't want to see the progress we've made. They want chaos. Well, chaos is what you get when you stop enforcing the law. One of the lessons of the decline in crime that began in the 1990s was broken windows policing, which we talked about just a few days ago here. Broken windows policing, Rudy Giuliani, and how he cleaned up New York City. The notion that if you police minor offenses against social order, it sent a signal to criminals that larger offenses would not be tolerated. It worked, and crime plummeted. Now in cities like Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, New York, and Baltimore, the approach is to tolerate even serious offenses against people and property. It should be no surprise that crime has gotten worse, that businesses which depend on order and safety are suffering. When the government doesn't provide order, people either organize themselves or pay organized crime for protection. And while people complain rightly that police often fail to observe due process, armed neighborhood groups and mobsters are unlikely to do better. And a Wall Street Journal article on Minneapolis's neighborhood patrols, you can see that Quote, "It got to the point where crime had no consequences," said Tanya Rivera, 30, who runs a child care center with her mother. "It was being done deliberately out in the open, drive-through drug dealing, drive-through prostitution, everything from gunshots to assaults to sex out in public. Everything you didn't want your neighborhood to look like." So after a number of community meetings, neighbors began constructing a barrier to close off 2 blocks of their street with trash cans and debris. For a while, a boat on a trailer protected one intersection. Eventually, an iron maker constructed a permanent gate. Police gave their approval as long as emergency responders could get through if requested by the neighborhood. Neighborhood men also began an armed control, kicking out anyone who didn't belong on the block after dark. Kicking out people who didn't belong on the block would be seen as racist and unconstitutional if police did it. The Journal quotes a resident as saying, "We're not proud of that, but it needed to be done. And it needed to be done because the city of Minneapolis didn't want to do its job." Is this a boon to the criminal class? Only in the short term. The thing to remember is, ultimately, police aren't there to protect the public from criminals, but to protect criminals from the public. Before the invention of modern police by Robert Peel in London, thus the term bobbies, Jose. That's why they call police in London bobbies. The public dealt with criminals mostly on its own and usually harshly. Arrest by the police and trial before the court was a big improvement over mob justice. Now some want to go the other direction. I predict it will end badly. That's a really interesting article. And, of course, you have to wonder when you see newsreels of Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, etc., how can people expect any other result when you take the police off the street and encourage criminality? That's exactly what you're going to get. Yesterday, my rather preachy presentation dealing with vincible ignorance really touched on that. And vincible ignorance is what allows these things to happen. When people see these things going on, they know it's wrong, but they delude themselves into thinking, well, maybe if I don't say anything, it'll go away or it'll get better, or maybe next year it'll be better. It won't get better until people do something about it. Okay, so much for the Daily News. A good editorial, not homegrown, but a good editorial nonetheless. Now we have the Post, and the Post says, "It's a give and take. As GovGuam imposes restrictions on public movement, it must help us survive economically." GovGuam's Wuhan virus situation has changed for the worse. The island's 6th Wuhan virus death was a man who was 70 and no longer responsive upon arrival at Guam Memorial Hospital on Thursday morning. Now, I'm going to brand this as fake news. The man was dead on arrival at Guam Memorial Hospital. The cause of death was a heart attack. He tested positive for the Wuhan virus, but to say he died from the Wuhan virus is attempting to gaslight us. Oh, we had another death now. It's just not that clear. And I mentioned yesterday, I saw something on the internet where a guy got killed in a motorcycle accident. He was posthumously tested positive for Wuhan virus and was counted as a Wuhan virus death. Okay, 7 school teachers have been confirmed to have Wuhan virus in 7 days recently, and thankfully this spread occurred as the Guam Department of Education reversed course and put a hold on the reopening of face-to-face classroom learning. Our governor, lieutenant governor, and Senator Will Castro, who is the lone Republican running for delegate to Congress, have fallen ill to Wuhan virus. Our active Wuhan cases have gone well past 200 currently, and that total is something we haven't seen since the pandemic began in March. Also causing concern is the state of hospitalizations patients based on information from Lillian Paris Posadas, the GMH administrator. The government hospital is seeing more people at the prime of their lives, many in their 30s, coming in with the Wuhan virus at the critical stage of the disease, when they could no longer breathe on their own. People are coming in with higher critical care needs. It's a pretty serious situation with these people who are coming in positive. We're seeing more and more individuals in serious condition. At the beginning of the restored pandemic condition of Readiness 1 6 days ago, the governor received a lot of criticism for slowing down the momentum that had just started for our business community. Many had just reopened when restrictions were put back in place. Retailers that were considered non-essential were limited to curbside pickup. Yeah, and I have to mention that for a while, even curbside pickup wasn't allowed, nor drive-through restaurants. But apparently, once they determined the impact of denying Jack his broadcast opportunity, they quickly reversed themselves on the drive-through restaurants. The Wuhan virus has become an academic pain as it's a health crisis for our small community. Tens of thousands of our jobs rely on welcoming more than 1.5 million tourists a year. Our jobs and our livelihoods are on the line, at least for many of us, especially in the private sector. But we must prioritize the need to protect our health and our community from further spread of Wuhan virus. The governor said if she needs to restore the road checkpoints again, she would do so. Now, this is why a lot of people have, don't think the governor's dealing with this in good faith. This whole idea of the roadside checkpoints was, if you pardon the expression, idiocy. How did the Wuhan virus, when the Wuhan virus was floating through the air, when it got to one of the checkpoints, say, oh, hold it, time out. There's a checkpoint here. I can't go through this. During the time that it was going on, I did a FOIA to Janella asking what the count was, how many people went through the checkpoints, how many were stopped, etc. They didn't keep track of any of that stuff. No need to. That wasn't the point. The point really was to show us who was boss. If she sees justifications to prolong the pandemic condition of Readiness 1 beyond 2 weeks, she would order it. This is a critical moment for our community to stop the further spread. We have to listen to the governor telling us to stay home if we don't have a critical need to go out and about. I don't think so. I don't think I have to listen to the governor telling me I have to stay home. If I want to get in my car and drive around the block or run around the block, and I'm not with anybody else and I don't encounter anybody else, isn't that my business? Isn't that kind of what we mean by a free country? We as a community are being tested on our resolve to take personal responsibility. Let us do what we need to do. Wear masks and wear them properly. Avoid going out until officials say it's okay. This is just not sitting very well. Follow the hand washing and social distancing rules by heart. We'll know when we've done it right by our community when the contagion subsides. We do ask our government to continue the community testing. Wuhan virus testing isn't within the reach of many island residents. And we found out yesterday that they don't have enough test kits to do a decent job of testing. That's why they've stopped the mass testing. Going back to the editorial, as our local government tells us what we need to do, Gov Guam must also do its part. As our local government tells us what we need to do. GovGuam must continue the free community testing efforts, continue ways to maximize providing unemployment benefits, help small businesses more so they will survive and the jobs they support will still be around when our health crisis is past. It's a give and take. No, it's not a give and take. It's a take. You know, later on I'll get to the part of the program where I talk about 4,000 Department of Education employees ordered to stay home and still be on the payroll. And we're all in this together. That's what our community expects of us as individuals and of Guam's elected officials. So I have the executive order, the latest executive order, and I was going to put it on the card under this title, Lou versus Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Because it's almost as though her approach is, in order to properly fight the virus, we've all got to be miserable. So I want everyone to unplug your TV sets and don't go near your phones or tablets or computers. Don't just get along without enjoying life at all. That's the only way that we can combat this virus. So I went through this executive order, and it's pretty interesting. You know, you'd think that something this important would be done with great care. Well, at paragraph 1C, there is a prohibition on gatherings and mandatory social isolation pursuant to Section 3317, Article 3, Chapter 3, Title 10. All public gatherings or congregations are prohibited. There is no Section 3317. The highest number of section in that chapter is 3309. So you can tell how important this is. My gosh, this is so important that we're going to do it right. We're going to do it right the first time. Then we go on a little bit, and we get the one that really gets me is we get down to paragraph. Yeah, still one, paragraph 1G, and that says that all public parks and beaches are closed. So the beaches, a public beach, is closed. So if I wanted to go to a beach by myself, am I putting anyone in danger? Or is anyone putting me in danger? Or is the beach infested with the coronavirus? What, you know, people will, I think, warm up to these kinds of things if they can see some reason or logic involved. So at 19, as you were 10 GCA, section 19502, small d 2, we find this, that the governor has the power to, or the public health authority has the power to control or limit ingress and egress to and from any stricken or threatened public area, the movement of persons within the area, and the occupancy of premises therein, if such action is reasonable and necessary to respond to the public health emergency. Well, just to make subsection 2 fit here, it really has to be stretched, because it says ingress and egress to and from any stricken or threatened area. So is a beach, is that a threatened area? Is there a risk that the beach could become infested or a harbor for the Wuhan virus? I don't think so. But even if you grant that, if I were to give that part of the section of the statute the benefit of the doubt, I never give anybody the benefit of the doubt, but if I were to do that, it's okay if such action is reasonable and necessary to respond to the public health emergency. So let's say I want to go to the beach. So I go down to Tuman and I go down to one of the hotels and I walk through the hotel, you know, all this access to the beach. I use public access. I get to the beach, I hang a left, and I walk down to Ipoh Beach. There I am on Ipoh Beach. Maybe I'm with my wife. What danger am I to anybody? You know, this makes about as much sense as saying for the duration of POS 1, no one is to go into the ocean under any circumstances. So I just see overreach and everything that goes on here. I comb through the law to see what's involved. Section 37.30. Well, let me come back after the break here.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so looking through the statutes, if I got into the beach from the ocean side like that, it's not trespassing. We do have a section 9 GCA 55.45, obstructing governmental functions. A person commits a misdemeanor if he intentionally obstructs, impairs, or perverts the administration of the law or other governmental function by force, violence, physical interference, or obstacle, breach of an official duty, or any other unlawful act, etc., except this section does not apply to flight of a person charged with a crime, refusal to submit to arrest, failure to perform a legal duty, etc. So I suppose that while I'm out there walking along on the beach, if a policeman came along and said, you have to get off the beach, and I didn't, you could make a case for obstructing governmental functions, because I would be, the beach, you'd have to be able to find that the beach is a governmental function. Just sitting there being sandy, the beach is a governmental function. And by my standing on it, I would be an obstacle or a physical interference to the beach. This is really a reach. But I suppose one could make that argument. Extreme overreach. The governor also was making some noise the other day about a public nuisance, and there was an article in the paper that said that this was from the PDN, individuals can be deemed a public nuisance. Individuals can be deemed a public nuisance if they don't wear masks in public don't maintain social distance or disobey the social gathering limit. So I looked up the definition for public nuisance, which I'll get to in just a second, but I noticed our Carl has really gotten anxious here. He's right here in the beginning of the program, possibly because he doesn't want to delay on getting started on one of his secret missions. Right, our Carl?
Absolutely. I'm always on some kind of secret mission. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on the why this is all happening. And I believe it's just like in the States, you know, with there's a country that has gotten to or is quickly approaching herd immunity. That is Sweden. And I've seen the CDC chart that shows the daily confirmed deaths from February, March through now, you know, early August. And it spikes early on before they got a handle on, you know, elderly being especially vulnerable. And then the deaths drop, they drop. And now it's very quickly approaching zero. And so they've reached herd immunity that way. In the States, New York did the same thing. They're reaching, actually in a very clumsy way, they're reaching herd immunity, but they did it in a really horrible way. One of the decisions that Governor Cuomo did was his policy to basically kind of force elderly into elder care homes. Estimates I've seen of how many deaths that caused are upwards of 11,000 people, which is often conveniently ignored. But you see now, Governor Cuomo is scarfing up all the credit as the death figures are dropping off because they've in a very clumsy way reached herd immunity.
How many? They only had to kill off a few thousand old folks to get there, right, Carl?
Exactly. Yeah, and no one in the media has called him out on this, or very, very few have called him out on this just terrible decision making. And he's in front of the cameras and taking all the credit, you know, scarfing it all up. But there's a phrase I saw one time that really makes sense. It's viruses will virus. And, you know, viruses function a certain way. They travel from one body to another, and they infect as many people as possible. You know, people go through their normal cycle. They get over the virus. And little by little, there are less and less people for the virus to attack because more and more people have the antibodies. So that is what is happening also on Guam. It's happened in Sweden. It's happening in New York in a very clumsy, disastrous way. And it's happening on Guam. But if government officials make enough maneuvers and make us do enough jumping jacks and, you know, turn around, you know, on one leg and hop 3 times and all this stuff.
I saw some kids playing a game that I remember playing when I was a kid. And it went kind of like this. One kid would say, take 3 giant steps. And the other kid would just stand there and wouldn't move. And then he'd say it again, take 3 giant steps. And the kid would say, Governor, may I? And the other kid would say, yes, you may. And then he'd take 3 steps. You remember that game, Carl? It used to be called Mother May I. Now it's called...
Yeah, there's another version of it called Simon Says.
Yeah, Simon Says thumbs up.
Yeah.
Governor says thumbs up.
So I think maybe we have Simon Says politics going on.
Well...
But the thing to bear in mind is
let's not hang that on Simon, though, you know.
Simon Sanchez might not be happy to hear that.
He just saved us $12 million by refinancing that bond, so let's let him live on that for a while before we start to beat him up for what the governor's doing, okay?
We'll cut him some slack. But the thing to bear in mind in all this with Sweden, comparing Sweden's approach to herd immunity and New York's, is that Sweden never locked down. They never mandated wearing masks. They never closed their borders. They never closed their schools for kids under 16. And they did whatever they could to avoid trampling on the rights of their people. Whereas New York did it completely the opposite way. They reached the same result, but New York's result, if you compare deaths per million between Sweden and New York is way, way up there. So they despite all these government mandates, they somehow got to herd immunity, but in a very clumsy way. And one other example I'll bring up is South Dakota, which is run by a Republican governor named Kristi Noem, N-O-E-M, and they've had spectacular results. Their state infection rate is 11 times lower than any other state per 100 citizens. They did no lockdowns, no contact tracing, no forced vaccinations, no government re-education, no social distancing, no executive orders, no mask mandates, no checkpoints. Businesses stayed open, public events continued as usual, and churches stayed open. They have about 884,000 people. I think their total deaths are 157. So they've done spectacularly well. Their economy has recovered so well that Governor Noem actually turned down federal assistance. She was offered money for the state to help with recovery, and she said, "We don't need it. We're doing fine." So I believe what's happening is that we're being prepared as the virus approaches herd immunity, which it eventually will. You know, that's what viruses do. That government officials can take all the credit and say, "See, it's happening." You know, we're no more deaths. You know, it's going to happen anyway. You know, as you can see by the example of South Dakota and Sweden. But you know, these two places didn't virtually destroy their economy. So anyway, that's my 2 bits.
You know, I think I mentioned before, as far as Sweden is concerned, why they didn't have to have any rules at all about social distancing in Sweden. Do you remember that? You remember why?
Was that I think you mentioned something about there's so many Nelsons there. Is that it, or?
That would work too. Yeah. No, the reason that they didn't have any rules in Sweden about social distancing is because they're all Swedes.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and the fact that they're all Nelsons, that probably plays into it too, Carl.
Well, my family used to be Nielsen, I was told, but I think we changed it to Nelson. I'm part Swedish, part German, so I kind of am biased toward the Swedes. You know, they got it right, I think.
Okay, well, good.
But anyway, we're proceeding toward herd immunity in kind of a not quite as clumsy as New York and disastrous, but viruses will virus. They do what viruses do. They spread from one person to the next. The survival rate overall is 99.6, from what I've heard. I saw another source that said 99.4. 99.4 survival rate, extremely high. Except among the elderly, 60 and especially 70 and 80. If you just take them out, it's higher, of course.
You know, the survival rate for a lot of the drivers out driving around after 2 p.m. isn't that high, Carl.
Yeah. Especially if they've imbibed a little bit.
Well, the ones that get into the races with concrete power poles.
Oh yeah, that's a very low survival rate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bob, that's my contribution for the day so far, at least.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you very much.
Very good. Sweden über alles. Thank you, Carl. Okay, so I was explaining this idea that, you know, the governor says that individuals can be deemed a public nuisance if they don't wear masks in public. don't maintain social distance or disobey the social gathering limit. So I looked up the concept of a public nuisance, and that's in 10 GCA chapter 20. And here's the definition of a public nuisance. Public nuisance means anything that is determined by the director to be dangerous to life, injurious to health, or render soil, water, or food impure or wholesome. Anything. And then the story says individuals can be deemed a public nuisance. So I think they're taking this whole misuse of the first person singular pronoun another step. Anything can be deemed a nuisance. Could anything be they? Or must anything be it? Anyhow, that's the definition of a public nuisance. And then at 20107, any condition which the director deems a public nuisance shall be subject to immediate abatement. Every person who maintains or commits any public nuisance on either public or private property, or who willfully omits to perform any legal duty relating to the removal of a public nuisance, is guilty of a misdemeanor. So I guess if I went into let's say a restaurant is open and I go into the restaurant and I'm not wearing my mask, I would be a public nuisance. And it would be my duty, my legal duty, to remove the public nuisance. So I'd have to go outside. Of course, what the governor is trying to do here is a classic case of pounding a square peg into a round hole, because if you look at this chapter on public nuisance, what it deals with primarily is things like drinks, food handlers, food items, buildings, etc. So if you got a junky building next to your house, that could be a public nuisance. But to try to bend this around to the point where, and then we've got 2108, public nuisance on private property. Every person who maintains, permits, or allows a public nuisance to exist upon his property, and every person occupying or leasing the property of another who maintains, permits, or allows a public nuisance to exist thereon, after receiving personal notice in writing from the director or attorney general to discontinue or abate same, is guilty of a misdemeanor. So this obviously is the attempt to pound a square peg into a round hole. I would think, I'm going to hypothesize that if the governor instead of trying to scare people into doing this, if the approach were more along the lines of a conciliatory request, it might bear more fruit. This is where we are, giving some really honest information about the status of the hospital, the infection rates, the death rates. Like if somebody dies of a heart attack, don't try to gaslight us and say, oh, that was, he died of the Wuhan virus. If the governor did that and then said, here are some things that we could all do that would help us avoid the virus, instead of this, I'm closing everything down, including the beaches. And that's why when I was thinking about putting this on the card instead of discussing it with the editorial, I was going to title it Lou versus Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness, because it seems that the goal here is to make sure, not so much about the spread of the virus, but that no one could possibly be happy. You can't go to the beach by yourself or with your wife, etc. Okay, let me take a short break here. We're coming up to a big halftime show in about 10 minutes.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Back home again in Indiana, Jose. I think I've told you this a million times, but I like to tell this story when I hear the song Back Home Again in Indiana. I always like to mention that I've been to some pretty exotic places in my life. I've been to India. I've been to Indonesia. I've even been to Indiana. Right, Jose?
You sound like one of those disco songs.
Back home again in Indiana.
Oh, well, the one that's I've been to Paradise. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
That one?
Oh, yeah. I hated that song. That was the most
I've never been to you.
That was the most nonsensical song.
You were digging deeper.
Yeah, I was. I was indeed. And I was tying it to my own personal experiences. As a matter of fact, not only have I been to Indiana, I've even been to Indianapolis. And up until a few months ago, I always used to say Indianapolis, Minneapolis. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You really can't tell them apart. Now you can, because Minneapolis is lying in ruin. Okay, I got Tim on the line. Good afternoon, Tim.
Bob, I know you've been to Indianapolis, but have you been to Agate?
I've been to Agate Bloodtown more than once, Tim.
You know, when I first moved here in '94, I had many locals from Agate warning me to put up a fence and get a dog.
That was beautiful downtown Agate, right?
And it's been beautiful. I've lived here for 26 years and I've never had an issue. So, you know, come on down to Agate anytime. But anyway, there's just this something about Agate people just seem to fear. I don't know what reputation it has, but it's a great place. I don't call in very often. So so when I do call in, it's usually something that I just can't keep my mouth shut about, and that is I continue to wonder at what it is. Certainly everything that you've said about the shutdown and the governor and the government and the senators, and all of it is true. But what is it amongst the people, we the people, that elect people like this? I don't get it. I compare it to the Aperon situation. What is it that caused us to look the other way for? Well, now we know it's 50 years, 30 of which were ruled by Aperon. I'm just fascinated by the question as to you're right about everything that's wrong with the ruling class, but what's wrong with the people that continue to put them there? I'm throwing myself into that mix. But what are we not doing? Maybe people like me aren't active enough. we just hope for the best, and then we're gonna gripe about it. I don't have an answer, Bob.
Yesterday, I spent some time on the concept of vincible ignorance.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm afraid that we have a chronic case of vincible ignorance here on the island, that by not taking action, by blinding ourselves to things that we know is wrong and tolerating them, we actually encourage those things to go on.
Did you? I'm sorry, I missed that. This is actually my first day off where I can listen to your show. But did you come up with some reason for that invincible ignorance? Is there some background to that?
It's vincible. No, it was a column that I got online, and the purpose of the column was to say stop being that way, not here's why we're that way.
Well, I guess I continue to be fascinated as to the question of why we're that way. It seems to be a choice for a reason. I think in the Apron case, we found out that there was some kind of respect or awe for the church per se that caused us to let our children be abused for 50 years. I think we're overturning that. Can we do the same with the way the people that we elect with our government? Is there a possibility of opening people's eyes?
I think so, and you know, I picked up that article, and there was something that I kept coming back to, and see if I can just bear with me for a second to see if I can find it. Probably not.
No worries. I'll do my own looking up. It's just a question that bothers me more and more each day. I read a lot of stuff about what's wrong, and I can't find the people who say how to fix it. There's something else that's going on. Yeah, we know it's happening in the universities, academia, even the church. Just not sure, and I'm just one of those kind of people that can't sleep until I find the fix, you know. So, maybe that's something we can explore down the road. But I'm just really, of course, frustrated like everybody else is, and wondering, okay, why do we let people? There was nothing unknown about the current governor. You know, she's been a public figure for 30 years or more. There's nothing unknown here, from the abortion issue to her politics, to her socialism, to what to the bank she owned, to everything, and people just simply signed up, and said, do it to us. So I'm hesitant to blame the governor, although I'd like to. But anyway, that's just.
I finally found what I was looking for, Tim. It was in an editorial. And it goes like this. Studies have shown that when life events cause a disruption to our social identity, we are more likely to experience lasting feelings of distress. Here's the key. For some people, social identity, who you are based on your relationship to a group, is the sole marker of who you are. And I use the example of, I'll tell you what, I got a lot more to say on this. Can you call back after the halftime show, Tim?
I certainly will. I'm on the road, and I hope I'm in a good spot, but I certainly will.
Okay, and after the halftime show, I'll talk to James, and then I'll get back to you. Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate it.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Democrat National Convention comes to its end. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Joe Biden accepting his party's nomination 33 years after his first run for the White House.
May history be able to say that the end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight as love and hope and light join in the battle for the soul of the nation. And this is a battle we will win, and we'll do it together. I promise you.
Anyone looking for signs of cognitive decline in the former vice president did not find any in his speech. Biden promised to bring the coronavirus under control, repeal tax cuts signed by President Trump, and restore the economy. But President Trump, campaigning yesterday near Biden's birthplace in Pennsylvania, said the former vice president's record says he won't deliver.
For the last 4 years, we've been reversing Biden's betrayals and delivering historic wins for the people of Pennsylvania. Your state lost over 50,000 manufacturing jobs when Biden was vice president. In my first 3 years, Pennsylvania gained 14,000 jobs, manufacturing, and going up at a level that nobody's ever seen.
The president tweeted during the Biden speech, in 47 years, Joe did none of the things of which he now speaks. The GOP convention begins Monday, mostly online, but the party says the speeches will be delivered live. There are now 5 people known dead in a series of wildfires in Northern California. 50,000 people evacuated, scores of homes destroyed, and others threatened.
It's a tough time. I mean, this is, it's been a hell of a year. Everything's stacked on top of each other.
California's Governor Gavin Newsom paying an unannounced visit to an evacuation center late Thursday. Another record close from the NASDAQ Thursday. The Dow and the S&P 500 also up. Asian stock markets closing Friday higher as well. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Former White House advisor Steve Bannon free on bond after pleading not guilty to charges from an online fundraising scheme.
Bannon entered the plea in a Manhattan federal courtroom just hours after he was arrested on a yacht off the Connecticut coast. The criminal complaint says Bannon and 3 others used the We Build the Wall group to raise more than $25 million to help construct the southern border wall. However, prosecutors say Bannon and the others pocketed much of the money. President Trump says he knew nothing of the effort and felt very badly about what happened. Bannon's bond was set at $5 million with nearly $2 million in assets securing his release. His travel will also be restricted. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
A number of people who attended the 10-day Sturgis motorcycle rally this month, including some who came from out of state, have come down with the coronavirus. That's according to state health officials who haven't given an exact number of rally goers who tested positive, but they say it's 24 or less. New Orleans handing another honor to a former Confederate president by renaming a street.
Jefferson Davis Parkway will become Norman C. Francis Parkway next year after the New Orleans City Council unanimously voted to change the name. Francis was the first black graduate of Loyola University's law school in New Orleans. The road runs near the historically black college, Xavier University. The 89-year-old serving as Xavier's president for nearly half a century. The city removed statues of Davis and 2 Confederate generals in 2017. Monuments honoring Confederates coming down in cities across the nation after the killing of George Floyd. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
A plane from Germany has arrived in Russia to transport Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny out of the country for treatment of suspected poisoning. But so far, his doctors have refused to release him. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Off Aid, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
There we are. Another great halftime show. Keith, I'm sure you had a good seat and enjoyed the whole show, correct?
Hello?
There we are. Another big halftime show. Like we always put on. Keith, I'm sure you had a good seat and really enjoyed the show, correct?
Nope. This is James. But I did enjoy the show. It was great. I love the cannon fire. It rocks.
Okay. Sorry, James.
No problem.
Yeah.
Your last caller, I believe his name was Tim, right?
Yes.
Okay. Tim, my neighbor, George Orwell wrote that a society unfairly taken advantage of by tyrants are victims. A society that continues to keep voting and keeping in office those tyrants are not victims but accomplices. Okay. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about this, and I said I was so disgusted to the fact that I was going to start checking in with the Election Commission about how to start a recall.
Right.
Well, I actually got so lit over this weekend's, situation that I called down to the election office, and very, very nice people, very courteous, but I'm wondering if there's a little bit of bias happening down there, if they're leaning one direction or the other. No, one young lady, she came right out. She said, no. She said, I'm sorry, I don't want to sound evasive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, there's a procedure that we have to follow. And I said, ma'am, I'm just trying to call and get some information about what is required to obtain a package. I said, I'm sure you guys have a specification or you have a package that's either available to be picked up or downloaded because you need specific documents in your format for signatures and the petition and the whole thing. I said, I'm just trying to get some information. And the way that this entire thing started yesterday was I called in and I said, yeah, I'd like to get some information on, is this something that I can download since we're supposed to be under lockdown? Can I come down to your office and pick it up? Oh, can we get your full name, please?
you need my full name just to answer a couple of very generic questions on the phone?
Sure.
Well, yeah, we need to know who we're talking to. Well, I don't need to provide any of that information. Could I just, I'm just asking a couple of very preliminary generic questions. Well, could I get your full name? No. Is there somebody else that can help me? The next young man answered the phone. The exact same thing. Well, can I get your full name? Yeah, my name is Mark. No, I need your full name. Well, to answer a couple of questions on the phone. Well, sir, we have a procedure that we have to follow. Okay, well, this morning I spoke to another young lady. This was the one who said, well, I'm not trying to be evasive, but she said, I can't give out any information over the phone. She said, there is a procedure that has to be followed. And I said, yes, ma'am, I'm just asking some questions about that procedure. And she directed me to 3 GCA section 1121.C2. I have to write a letter, according to her, and I have to mail it into them to be able to get any information about starting a recall. I don't know, Bob, does this kind of smack wrong with you? It does with me, or am I reading too much into this?
Well, let me ask you a question, and my full name is Bob.
Okay, Bob.
Bob Talltails.
Full name is James.
What is 3 GCA section blah blah blah? What does it say? I don't have it.
I don't know. Quite frankly, that was a phone conversation while I was busy out running around over on base today, and I haven't had a chance to sit down in front of a one-eyed monster and look it up yet.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, let me start here. First of all, anybody who has any experience in an office knows that you have to teach people how to answer the phone. The suspicion is all you have to do is pick it up and start talking. But one of the worst things you can do, and this happens from time to time. Hello, I'd like to speak to Jack McClukenbach. Jack McClukenbach, may I? Can you tell me who's calling? And then you give your name. Oh, he's not in.
Yeah.
If I were John Smith, would he be in? Well, So, really it could be just poor telephone techniques. But I can't imagine an office in a government agency that would require anyone to do anything more than to sound sort of human in the process. But I know here's something else along the same lines. There are some government offices, if you go in to ask a question, they've got a tablet there and they want you to sign your name. Will you please sign in? No, I won't sign in. Why do I want to sign in?
Yeah.
Well, that's our procedure.
And I tell them it's my procedure to not follow those unrequired procedures.
Yeah. Other than that, we've only come close to recall one time, and that was not a recall that was started by citizens' petition. That was a recall that started in the legislature but never came to fruit. But I would think that anyone who answers the phone at the Election Commission ought to be able to give you the correct statutory site and then tell you if there are forms. Yeah, we have forms. We can email them to you. We can put them in the U.S. mail, or you can come down and pick them up. But to start off a telephone conversation by saying, I don't want to sound evasive, which, of course, is exactly what you're doing when you use that word.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was, honestly, it really never hit me that I was going to get 3 different people, all of them clamoring for a full name.
Yeah.
And to just get a yes, sir, we have a package that's available online. Go to our website, blah, 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 .gov, or you can come down and pick that package up as soon as the governor lifts the quarantine, or no, I'm sorry, we're not open right now, but yes, we do have a package that will be available. That was the response that I was expecting. I wasn't expecting to have to submit copies of the commissar stamped state travel papers to be able to just go down and get a question answered.
Well, I can give you some advice, James, for the next time you call. Two items of advice. Ask for Maria Pangilinan. She's the director, and she is as user-friendly a public official I've ever run into in my life. She's very good attitude, always wants to help, etc. So ask for Maria Pangilinan. Second piece of advice I could give you is if anybody really presses you for your name, tell them you're Bob Klitzkie.
Well, okay, Bob, I appreciate that.
And they'll probably hang up on you. So.
Yeah. Well, no, Bob, I just wanted to relate that to you. But, yeah, no, the actual thing that I wanted to get across along the lines of other than, for your last caller, Tim, when he said, what does the average person do? I'm actually trying to start figuring out what we can do, and I'm already starting to meet with some state-sponsored resistance, dare I say that. But anyway, no, look, folks, everybody's got to put their thinking cap on, okay? I'm an engineer, so I look at the actual math, not the new math. I look at the old math where 2 + 2 actually still equals 4, okay? I look at the empirical data, the information, and the actual situation that is presented before me. And when I look at the number of folks that we've had that have died, when I look at the actual fatality rate, when I look at the number of folks that we have in the hospital right now for COVID, okay, not for something else, and the guy came in and they swabbed him and he tested positive because he came in, for chest pains or a heart attack related issue.
Came in dead, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, that gentleman the other day, yes, that's very correct. It's looking like he most probably passed away from a heart attack. Why would you, I guess I started to say, why would you swab somebody that was already deceased? But okay, maybe I do understand the importance of that, trying to figure out the cause of death. But I guarantee you he's on somebody's list, on somebody's roll somewhere now as a COVID fatality. Whether he had a heart attack or not, that was probably secondary. Okay, the way that they're doing the tallies, the way that they're doing the testing with not only the false positives, but the false negatives, every one of the models and the predictions that they have had since the beginning of this back in, January, February have been not a little bit wrong, have been way wrong, totally wrong. They have fallen back. They have gone back and changed after, the numbers that they were predicting terribly. You take all of those things into account, which are actual, known, factual information. You look at the number of people that we here in Guam have in CHC for COVID. We look at the mortality rate and the number of folks that are in the hospital that are listed as stable and recovering versus I could be wrong, correct me if you're up to date more than I am. A couple of days ago, there was only 1 or 2 individuals that were listed as critical. Okay, everyone else was listed as stable. The numbers just don't add up to closing down our economy, putting our businesses out of business, putting our people that really do want to work shouldn't have to fight to go to work, okay? There's people out there that really want to work, and I applaud them for having a sense of responsibility and moral civics and wanting to not be a drain on the general society at large. And they're being told that they're going to be fined, if not arrested, for doing so. And the only thing that we can do is start telling our representatives, look, if you don't put forward an action to change this, then not only we're going to recall the governor, we may recall you too. Okay, that may be a multifold process here, but the only way that we're going to affect reasonable, common sense changes is to start putting these people on the street and let them be unemployed and go looking for a job, and put some people in that have got some common sense.
Good points, Jims. Good points.
All right, Bob. Have a good one.
Yeah, thanks for calling. Okay, so Tim is back in the green room, and I've got Jimmy in the green room. So, Tim, I'm going to take Jimmy first because Jimmy is usually short, to the point, and will let you know that he buys his phone calls, buys his minutes. He doesn't have an account. So, Jimmy, what can you tell me this afternoon?
Well, you must correct your statement.
All right.
I do have an account.
You do have an account.
Because the way GovGuam does it.
All right.
Yeah, they advertise it $19.33, $19.33, then they charge me $25 every month.
So what can you tell me, Jimmy?
Okay, you talking about, okay, let's, two things. First, we'll talk about James.
Mm-hmm.
And when he calls the kind, helpful, intelligent GovGuam workers, and they ask him for his name, the best thing to say is Nunya. Rhymes with Munya. Nunya F. Biz.
Okay.
And another thing, plastic surgery. You said you had some plastic surgery? Hey, I don't listen to it. I watched it on YouTube.
Okay.
You said you had some plastic surgery, you bleeding from your chin or something?
Oh, yeah. Right, Jimmy. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I watch it, but I just don't. But, my friend, I asked him. Actually, I showed him that. He said, that guy's had plastic surgery. What could you do for him? He said, I can't do nothing for that face.
Yeah, truer words were never spoken, Jimmy.
Well, he said, I can't improve on perfection.
Oh, okay. So, very good, Jimmy.
Yeah, but anyway, I just hope people keep on calling, all the kind, helpful GovGuam employees, and telling them what they think about GovGuam.
We'll encourage that, Jimmy.
What?
We'll encourage that.
Well, I think James already, that guy that called earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone loves GovGuam. Except people who don't work for GovGuam. Anyway, I'll let you go.
Good talking to you, Jimmy, as usual. Okay, so I've got Tim, and then I've got Bruce Williams in the green room hanging on for after Tim. So, Tim, before the big halftime show that we all love so much, we were talking about the phenomenon that seems to almost require that people keep putting office holders in office that don't serve them, and they keep going through the same thing over and over again. My last caller, James, made a good point. He pointed out that George Orwell, once upon a time, made the statement that people who live under a dictatorship that treats them poorly are victims. People who continue to put up with that dictatorship are not victims, they're co-conspirators, and I think that's kind of where we're getting at. The point that I wanted to make before you left was, and I'll repeat it, are you outside, Tim? You've got an awful lot of
Sorry, I'm on Marine Corps Drive.
Really? Well, it's really noisy.
Yeah, in rush hour. Let me see if I can pull over someplace.
Oh, okay. So
Try to do that.
I was explaining this sentence that I got out of this editorial. For some people, social identity, who you are based on your relationship to a group, is the sole marker of who you are. And I'm afraid that's so true in so many cases. And the oversimplification that I used to illustrate that was someone who moved from out of state to Green Bay. And of course, football is really important in Green Bay. So when it's time to tailgate or talk about last night's game, you don't want to start talking about the Bears. You need to be a Packer fan if you're going to live in Green Bay, or you're going to have an awful lot of trouble. And I think that's an example of the phenomenon. So I think what we may have seen here is that people see themselves as Catholics, as good Catholics, and they want to fit in with the Catholic society. And the fact that there are things that are going on that really test their vincible ignorance, it's just more convenient to overlook those things and stay with the group than it is to step forward and take action on things that require action. That's my kind of 2 cents worth, Tim, and I'll let you respond, and then I'll give you my idea of what we can do about it.
Okay. I guess that's what I'm looking for, is what we can do about it. But actually, James's call was timely. It brought something to mind that you had actually pioneered that I think James can do. I remember a couple of years ago, you won a very important lawsuit relative to the Freedom of Information Act. And the Freedom of Information Act is really all of us little lay people, have to control the government. And you sued the government and you won. And that set a precedent that all of us can do. So I don't know how that would fit in with James's situation, but, whoever's asking for his name, I would say, well, I'm going to be down there in about 10 minutes, and I want you to show me everything, all public documents relative to my requirement, whatever requirement there is for me to give you my full name before you can answer my freaking question. Otherwise, there's a $10,000 fine, or whatever it is,
Yes.
You take a copy of your case down there. Bob, this is all we have. We don't have anything else. I mean, other than calling your show. James had a good point about, we're going to put you out on the street. But, who's going to take their place? It's more of the same. The good people are not going to run. We're just too busy making a living and doing stuff like that. That's just not going to happen. The only way you win stuff is the way, and I know you were involved in this, and actually more so your wife in a way, that, something called the Laity Forward movement that Lou Klitzkie pioneered that actually brought down this whole political scandal. Some people think it's Jungle Watch, but it wasn't. It was a group of ladies basically headed by certain Lou Klitzkie. But what they did was they made those people pay. They made them publicly pay out in the open for 54 straight weeks, not going away and showing up every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. at the Archbishop's Mass in front of that cathedral and not going away. That's how things change. It didn't change because of the Vatican or because some legislature thing or whatever. It changed because there was people who wouldn't go away. So combination of what you did, you pioneered the Freedom of Information Act, not the act itself, but of course the consequences of not obeying it. And then with the APROM thing, if it can teach anybody, this is what you do. And I just think that there's a lot of good people out there who are appealing to a standard that doesn't exist, quote unquote common sense. Let's stop that. I think that's what we're shooting ourselves in the face every time we use those words. It doesn't exist. These people don't live by common sense. They live by consequences, what it's going to cost them. And when you make it cost them something, that's when you get things done. And like I said, what you did with the Freedom of Information lawsuit, and what your wife did with the Lady Forward movement. If anybody wants to learn from that, this is really where Guam. If it changed anywhere, that's where it changed.
Interesting points, Tim. I guess I can't add too much to Klitzkie, and Klitzkie is a solution to the problem.
Well, when you got a perfect face, there's nothing else you can really do. I think that was Jimmy's point, right?
Yeah, that's just what Jimmy said. There's nothing a plastic surgeon can do for me. You can't improve on perfection. Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
After you.
Well, I just want to hammer home that point. I rarely get to listen to you just because of my work schedule, but when I do, it's probably not healthy for me because I get mad, and I'm angry for the next week or two, because I hear good people that mean well and have great points and everything else, but nothing's getting done because no one wants to pay the price, the real price. Going out there and picketing in front of the Guam Election Commission, not going away, showing up every day, even if it's for an hour, just like those ladies did praying the rosary in front of the bishop's residence in the early days of that whole thing against the Apollon. That's what it really takes. I don't know if people are really willing to do that, or do we just want to gripe and I mean, it's great for your show. I mean, your audience is growing, but I think just that's why I probably shouldn't listen very often because I know what the cost is.
Well, I'm glad you did, Tim. So I'm down to the seventh inning stretch here. So a very provocative call, and the next guy in the green room is Bruce Williams, who kind of fits into what you were just talking about. And then I've got another Joe hanging on. So thanks for calling, Tim.
Excellent. I got to go to work anyway, so for me.
Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy. What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois, the seventh inning stretch. And going from the seventh inning stretch from Chicago right back to the historic studios of The Point in Upper Tumum, and greeting Bruce Williams. Welcome to Tall Tales, Bruce.
Aloha, Mr. Klitzkie. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bruce.
Hey, that's a great call that James called in because I had the same thoughts as he did. The numbers don't add up, and he's an engineer, so he's a little more qualified to say that. But I think I wanted to add to what he said. One of the things that I'm very disappointed with is the fact that all conversation is shut down that doesn't go with their agenda. And we saw this with the reporters trying to ask questions early on. They just want to tout their agenda, and they don't want to have any public discourse. So why, as Tim said,
we need to do something. One of the things that stands out to me is I've talked to so many doctors and so many different people who totally agree with everything that's being said as far as why we never needed to shut down. And these are prominent doctors. And when I asked them, I said, well, haven't you been on these committees? They say, yes. I said, so don't they listen to you? No. They go around in a circle, but they always come back to their agenda. So they're not asking for medical advice. They're following the advice of some political, I don't know what the right word would be, but somebody in the mainland. They're just following the same thing that Hawaii's doing, is totally Democrat, and all the other Democratic states. They're following the same agenda, right? But nobody's coming out, and this is what disappoints me with the doctors, and I tell them this. Why aren't you coming out and talking about the fact there is a treatment that works, that has great success, called hydroxychloroquine, right? In my daily training with any people that I train, I let them know about this, and almost everyone goes, really? There's a treatment? Because they're hiding it. They don't want people to know about it. Because what does that treatment mean to these people? It takes away fear, and this is what our government is using, fear. They made such a big thing about this one man that died, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. There's 5-6 people die every day on this island, but this guy is suddenly a martyr because he had COVID and he died. Well, that's the way of life. But they're using this fear and keeping people in the dark about the fact there's a treatment that's very successful. It's very inexpensive. Also, they shut down any discourse. You never hear the other side because they shut it down. And I'm very disappointed with that. So the other thing I'm greatly disappointed with is no one seems to want to speak up. And I'm talking about businesses, because businesses are hurting. They're really hurting. And why aren't they speaking up? Well, they have their business license that could be taken away. They have EPA that could come in and write them up. They have public health that could shut them down. This is all hanging over everyone's head, and they know that they'll do this. This is what they're using to keep everybody quiet. But Tim's right. We need to stand up. We need to do something about this because we are going nowhere fast, and the island is hurting. So that's my 2 cents. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, well, pretty valuable 2 cents, Bruce. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
So long. Okay, and then we have another Joe on the line. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Hey, Uncle Bob, just listening to your program, very educational. I would suggest, although it seems so obvious, that people start thinking about listening to your program more often, and in fact, maybe start requiring the legislature to listen to not only K57, but also 93.3 FM, to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and to the Ray Gibson Show. So if they did this, they would get a bigger picture, and people would complain less, or at least they feel like they'd be heard more often. So I think maybe if you get a Republican majority, I'm hoping that would solve some of the issues. People feel that they're heard more. However, again, I would just say, just make it like a cultural thing. Hey, don't just listen to AM K57. Listen to FM 93.3. If you have to have a resolution to say such things, so that not only more of the liberal Democrat views are heard, but also some of the more conservative views are heard. I mean, they would say, well, you have Senator Lamarena on K57. He tries, but there aren't. I think he isn't as far. He isn't as conservative, maybe as Ray and yourself. So I would suggest just anyone who's listening, encourage anyone you know to listen to 93.3 FM as much as you listen to K57, and try to get the legislature to listen and say, hey, did you hear anything that was said on Tall Tales, on the Ray Gibson Show, the Bob Klitzkie Tall Tales, and so maybe give them a homework assignment. Say, okay, what were they talking about? Then grade them. If they don't know what was the subject in the show, then obviously they're out of touch with a certain demographic of the population in Guam. So anyway, what do you think of Guam? Does that sound reasonable?
That sounds great. But as Ray said, set your dial to 93.3. You needn't touch it again.
Well, definitely try to, try to encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, Uncle Bob, thanks for your time, and I'll just keep listening.
Okay, thanks for calling another Joe. And then I've got Keith on. Keith is now on the air. Good afternoon, Keith. I thought I had you a little earlier.
No, I was out working.
Yeah, well, I had a caller named James, and I misidentified him as Keith. But he took it as a compliment, so no problem.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice to hear. I actually do identify as James, a black cat, and a transgender wombat, depending on my mood.
That's real diverse. That's diversity.
Yeah, I'm trying, trying to get with it.
Mm-hmm.
Does Guam, following up on, I unfortunately missed the first hour of your program. Again, I was at work. But I did hear a couple of the more recent callers, and I agree with you. I think agree with them and yourself, that the time of just sort of kvetching about all this really is coming to an end, and something needs to be done. Does Guam have the processes or the ability to conduct a recall?
Yes, sir.
And what, if it's not too cumbersome, where can one look that up and get started?
It's primarily collection of signatures and filing some papers, but collection of signatures is the real tough part. You collect enough signatures, and the election commission will call a recall election, and people go to the polls. I can't tell you how many signatures, but it's in the statute.
Okay, something to ponder.
Yeah. Are you game, Keith?
Oh, definitely. I just, unfortunately, with not being on social media anymore, I'm just not sure how to get the word out. I'm not sure I got the time to go knocking on 5,000 doors. Thankfully, I'm an essential employee, and I have work. But I see all around me people that are just really struggling with this, and I'm enraged that no one in a position of power in GovCom seems to care.
Well, a couple of days ago, I brought up the old phrase "mind over matter." I'm sure you're familiar with that phrase.
Yes.
And as far as the governor is concerned, it's mind over matter. She doesn't mind, and we don't matter.
Yes. When I came into work this morning and was approached with the latest Joint Information Center notice, my mind immediately went to Henry II, to paraphrase.
First of all, we'll kill all the lawyers.
Well, there's always that.
Yeah.
I mean, that I almost have tattooed on my chest. But will no one rid us of this meddlesome governor?
Mm.
Not in the sense that Harry II meant it. I mean, not violence or anything, but just,
Sure.
And that's where the idea of the recall came to mind. But, if I wish I had the social media contacts, but anyone willing to go in and work as a team on this, I'm game.
Well, I have a feeling that R. James is more than game for that, Keith, so maybe you can hook up with R. James.
Sounds good. I don't know how I can get in touch with them. I don't know if you act as a clearinghouse for providing phone numbers and emails, but I'm certainly willing to give mine.
Sure. Just we'll have you give your phone number to Jose, and the next time that James calls, if he asks for it, Jose will have it.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, I thank you much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. And then next, I go to the very heart of the program here. We're going on location to the drive-through at McDonald's, right, Jack?
Well, not today, Bob. Today is Fish Day, Fish Friday.
Okay.
I'll stop the rest of the smoked pork during the week, so it's Fish Friday for me, and I'm home frying some fish with my family. So I just called. I just wanted to ring in on the problems with the numbers here in Guam, as mentioned before. So the JIC reports there's like 702 cases of COVID, let's call it what it is, when JIC counts. It's COVID-19. And 6 deaths. But to the rest of the world, the rest of the world that uses Google, you punch in there COVID-19, Guam deaths. It gives you the figures from the New York Times and from Wikipedia. And these figures include those cases that were on the Theodore Roosevelt and the 1 death. And I think that's exact because we're in the 2020 census, right? And guess what? On the 2020 census for Guam, they include the military. So why not we don't include the cases that happened on the U.S. Theodore Roosevelt to our total count, because those tests were done here in Guam. They were housed in our hotels. That the poor service member, petty officer, chief petty officer, I think, Thacker was his name, died here in Guam. And I can guarantee you, without a doubt, on his death certificate, when it says a place of death, I can almost guarantee you it says Guam. But yet, on the COVID-19 political side, we don't count this. We don't count this in our total figures. So we got 2 figures. We got one that apparently matters to just the population here in Guam, and then we have another figure that matters to the whole world that uses Google. So we have 2 different numbers, one more than the other, and this is what happens when you politicize an event such as this Wuhan virus. And it's a shame. It's just a shame. Because when I look at the floor markings, 6 feet here, put your mask on. Those floor markings remind me of all those old 70s satanic cults where they drew on the floor, and you stand in there in the middle of that pentagon or whatever, pentagon, right? Is that what it's called, that circle?
Pentagram.
That'll protect you or something.
It's called
or it enhances your power.
Pentagram.
That's what I see when I see these lines on the floor. And, like I said, fine. If it's a placebo for you, more power to you. More power to you. But, I just reached my limit when I drove through when I went through that drive-through the other day, and I told you about it, and I was challenged. And some millennial on the other side, and I just didn't want to hassle with it. I was in the mood. I was about to become a Karen. We are very familiar with Karens here. In fact, I think
you were challenged for what, Jack?
Well, he challenged me to that I didn't have a mask on while going through the drive-through.
Oh.
And so, it's not a hill that I wanted to die on.
I think that guy's name started with a K.
Yeah, we are familiar with Karen. In fact, I think we have trademarks to Karen because Karen hit us first back in the 50s or 60s?
That's true.
So we know how Karen works.
Mm-hmm.
But I just gave her that 1,000-mile stare and 1,000-yard stare, and I put my mask on and just went about it. And that's the last time I'm going through the drive-through for a while or eating out.
You're not going to go through the drive-through, Jack? Does that mean you're not going to call
but-
tall tales anymore?
Well, no, I'm home now, and quarantine, and I guess I don't know whether the drive-through is essential or well, yeah, in my case it is, but maybe when they start paying me to go through the drive-through, but it's just amazing. I was thinking, Bob, how much money you think we could have saved as taxpayers if the government just furloughed people during the crisis and had the federal side pick up for their unemployment? How much money could we have saved?
A lot, Jack.
I mean, I wouldn't. Hello?
Yeah. Hey, Jack, I got a break for the home stretch here, so I'll let you go back to your supper, okay?
All right, Bob. Have a great weekend.
Good talking to you.
Always can help you. This island our home. To live with been a friend since every I know. Now we're banking on the future. More services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put matches, we place rules. Viva! Bank Pacific! Viva!
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So Jimmy and I are going to ride down the home stretch here from Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. Right, Jimmy?
All right. But I'll be brief. You know, that old rhyme, it reminded me of how Gov Guam reacts to any kind of emergency, financial, biological, any kind of emergency. This is how Gov Guam reacts to an emergency. When in trouble or in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout.
Okay, Jimmy, I'm going to translate that into Chamorro and perhaps make that the motto of the show. When in doubt, let's see. When
in trouble.
Okay, when in trouble, when in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mega hugga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one, Jimmy.
She leads the way. Mega hugga.
Yeah.
Mega hogger. First one to the public trough. Hoggers?
Say again?
Hoggers.
Hoggers.
Mega hoggers. Hoggers. You know, all these Gov Guam, they want to get to the public trough, the Roy Vespuccio. He's doing pretty good at the public trough.
Yes, he is.
And then we got the mega hogger. She's the biggest pig because she can give pieces of the public trough to her buddies. And you could call it nepotism, or you could call it favoritism, or you could call it corruption, or...
Well, you know...
You could call it Gov Guam.
Jimmy, you know, nepotism's okay so long as you keep it in the family.
Yeah. How about favoritism?
Favoritism, that's a horse of a different color, since we're on the home stretch here, Jimmy.
Okay. I'm sorry to bother you.
Thanks for calling, Jimmy.
Bye.
A little slice of heaven every time Jimmy calls with his his homespun wit. Well, I'm just going to pick up on a couple of things here. I'm going to speak as another Joe said, everybody in the legislature ought to be listening to Tall Tales, and they ought to be listening to Ray Gibson. And everybody who is a candidate who is not an incumbent, if you're a challenger and you're not listening to Tall Tales, you must not want to win very badly. So I'm going to give you some, I've passed out a few points already, and I will continue to do that. But here is something for you or for anybody in the legislature, especially James W. Moylan, if he gets over introducing woke legislation. How about introducing a bill to amend 19 GCA chapter, 10 GCA chapter 19, where all of the governor's magic powers exist, and change it so that instead of requiring a vote of 8 senators to repeal it, change it so that at the end of a month it would require the vote of 8 senators to continue it, so that every month the governor would have to convince at least 8 senators that she's not just operating on a basis of whim or a kind of a by guess and by golly approach. That would be a good start. And those of you who are incumbents, you might think about drafting up a resolution and looking around for the 8 signatures. If you only got yourself and one more, you'd be sending an extreme strong message out to the governor. But if you want to continue with this vincible ignorance that I described yesterday, this, well, yeah, I really don't like what's going on, but, you know, in the legislature, in order to get along, you got to go along. So I really don't want to piss off any other senators because they won't support my stuff if I do. And if they don't, then maybe I won't be able to get reelected because I won't be able to get any of my stuff passed into law. Wrong. You know, if you are a senator, you communicate with your constituents one way. And that one way is the bills that you introduce. It's not the press releases that you make. It's not the different times that you go to the dead or any of the other cookie pushing that you do as a senator. You make your mark by the means of the bills that you introduce. And if you introduce a bunch of lackluster, feel-good bills like, well, let's mark out all of the trails. Let's put signs on all the trails and let's have the fire department do that. Or no more plastic bags in the stores. You're not going to make it. You're not having any impact at all. And if there were ever a time for a senator to have an impact, this is the time, because we've got a governor who is obviously operating as a tyrannical wannabe. She wants to be a tyrant. Think of where we would be if the members of the legislature had passed Talina Nelson's $4,000 fine bill for violating any executive order that the governor put her name to. Remember that? That was crazy. And there was some doubt as to whether or not it would pass or not. So, senators and challengers, it's time to graduate from vincible ignorance, from averting your eyes from things you don't want to see, from turning your attention away from things you don't want to consider. It's time to get out and be in service to the public and not to the body called the legislature or the title called the governor. You're the only ones that can do it right now, and if you don't do it, then I remember after the Juan Pat 10, 7 senators lost their jobs, and that could happen to you. Okay, well, here we are at the end of another week of Tall Tales. It's going to be really tough on Jose and I, but we got 2 days with no Tall Tales. This lockdown is bad enough, but no Tall Tales is even worse. But we'll be back Monday at 1600. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The Democrat National Convention ends. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. With Joe Biden's acceptance of his party's presidential nomination.
I'm a proud Democrat, and I'll be proud to carry the banner of our party into the general election. So it's with great honor and humility I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
The former vice president charged President Trump has cloaked America in darkness.
If you entrust me with the presidency,